This alpha male fitness influencer is already sitting in jail facing multiple felony charges, but now former employees and people who claim they work behind the scenes are making allegations that could raise even more questions about how he built his multi-million-dollar coaching business in the first place. Because it's safe to say things are looking bad for Wes Watson, but now somehow they're looking worse. Because unfortunately, Wes is no stranger to this channel. Over the last few years, we've covered the gym assault case, the civil lawsuits, the bizarre social media meltdowns, and then of course the domestic violence allegations that land him right back behind bars.
Shut the up.
As far as it comes to ruining your own life, this guy is literally a professional. And the irony here is the dude's a life coach. Who in their right mind would ever want to take life advice from this guy, let alone pay for it? But unfortunately, a lot of people did. But before we get into this, a quick disclaimer here. A lot of what we're talking about today comes from the reporting from the YouTuber John Bravo, who we've also talked about here on this channel before, in a positive way, because his stuff is great. But according to him, he's now spoken to a bunch of former employees and people who were a part of Wes Watson's inner circle. Some of these claims have not been independently verified, and as of right now, we're talking about allegations, not criminal charges. But considering that John Bravo has been on top of covering the updates for Wes Watson, I still think it's really relevant to include what information he's found. But regardless, if you watched my previous videos on Wes Watson, you probably noticed the thing that never really made sense. The dude was living like a movie villain. Mansions, Bugattis, high-end Lambos, Rolls Royce, like everything. Security guards following around and posting up randomly in his videos just to make themselves seem apparent. These things aren't cheap. So how in the world was he affording all this? Well, everyone was essentially saying coaching, because apparently thousands of people were paying him every single month for fitness advice, mindset coaching, and access to his programs. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who make good money selling courses and coaching. That's nothing new. But Wes's lifestyle always seemed excessive, a little bit beyond the typical Miami LARPer, especially when you actually watch how he interacted with some of the people paying him. Because according to recordings that have surfaced over the years, some of those coaching calls weren't exactly what you would expect from someone charging these insane prices. Because instead of encouragement or mentorship, a lot of the clips people were sharing showed Wes screaming at clients, insulting them, cutting them off, and genuinely treating paying customers like they personally ruined his day simply by existing. And that's where a lot of these new allegations start. Because according to John Bravo's reporting, several former insiders claim that Wes's business may have been operating very differently behind the scenes. The claims range from questionable billing practices all the way to allegations that, I mean, if they're true, they would be way more serious. And in my first video I ever made on Wes, if I remember correctly, I did point out the fact that there were allegations that people paid for coaching calls from him and some other dude showed up. Like, what? So essentially with his fitness business, Wes offered personal coaching calls, but he either constantly reschedules or puts the calls on his staff. But then you have that whole weirdness at his most recent deposition, you know, the one he had right before he got arrested again. In that case, the lawyers ask what his company is, and Wes says it's a fitness coaching business, online coaching and training. Then Wes says there's currently no people employed but him. But then he started stumbling and mentioned that he had 2 employees before, but he couldn't really remember who they were. He said, I had 2 guys that were employed, Kurt Gagarin and Julian, I forgot his last name. And I'm pointing this out to say consistently through the reporting on Wes Watson, there's always been a big question mark next to how his businesses ran and who was even working there. But before we get into the allegations themselves, I think it's important to understand the basic question that got people looking into this in the first place. How did this guy actually make so much money? Because we're talking about a guy who built an entire online persona around being richer than everyone else. Every video was about money, every rant was about money, every argument somehow turned into a speech about how much more money he has than them, and therefore they should sit down and just listen to him.
I'm Wes Watson. Everybody knows who I am.
But now he's sitting in a jail cell waiting for trial for multiple felony cases. People are starting to take a little bit better look at where he was actually making his money from. And according to the people speaking with John Bravo, the answer may be a lot more complicated than he sold coaching programs. Because let's start with what the customers were supposedly paying for in the first place. Because some of the coaching calls that have surfaced are definitely interesting, to put it lightly. There's something else. Like, if you've never seen anything from Wes before, in a way you're kind of blessed, but also You might assume that people were just paying for personalized fitness plans or something like that, but instead, no. Some of the recordings that have surfaced paint a very different picture. And I mean, to be fair, some people do like Wes's approach. This is why these like alpha male LARPing boot camps get sold out all the time, where you essentially have some dude screaming at you in the mud and he's like shooting a garden hose in your face, and it's all for, I don't know, to learn mental toughness or something like that. It doesn't make sense. People pay like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to essentially get bullied by men who they think are more successful than them. But Wes's whole brand was essentially built around tough love. He wasn't trying to be your therapist. He wasn't trying to be your friend. He was the guy yelling at people to get off the couch and take responsibility for their lives. And that's, I guess, what attracted a lot of people in the first place to Wes Watson. And yes, obviously there's like 80 billion layers of irony here about Wes Watson being the person yelling at people to take responsibility in their own lives. And meanwhile, Wes is in the current situation that he's in. But you could easily argue that there's a big difference between being, you know, blunt and direct and just treating paying customers like garbage. And some of these calls are honestly very hard to listen to.
People come through my funnel and they do this. So you're trying to coach others. Yes, I'm trying to coach others. You should have said that.
I guess what I am starting to realize now, what my most recent breakthrough I've had mentally, is that I see how it's possible to actually make more than just like a salary job to actually get.
He's trying to say he wants to coach. It's taking him this long to say he wants to make money online. You piece of you.
Imagine paying a dude like $2,000 and he just verbally insults you. I mean, this is actually this is a heist. Come on, guys. Also, it's like, what are we trying to make an inception of just providing like zero value to society? It's like, hey, I want to be a coach, so I'm going to pay multiple thousands of dollars to another coach to learn how to coach other people and get other people to buy my course. I mean, we live in fascinating times. It just seems like everyone wants a shortcut, which is how so many people get sucked into paying for this info space. And I'm not saying it's like all info is bad. I mean, there are actually like really good information out there, but like the high ticket like info space is just so scammy in so many ways. I mean, paying $2,000 for a coaching call like this, it's just there's very few cases where it'll actually help you. But you know, aside from this being kind of funny as an outsider of this call, the thing that did stand out here is the fact that like the guy on the call is just trying to explain what he's struggling with, and instead of helping him, you know, what he's paid to be doing right there, he just screams at him. Dude's essentially being paid thousands of dollars and he's just sitting there frustrated the guy isn't answering fast enough, which is kind of ironic because if somebody pays you for coaching, isn't figuring out what they're trying to say literally a part of that job? Like imagine you're hiring a math tutor and 5 minutes into the session, they start screaming, why don't you already know the answer? Why don't you know what you're solving for here? Like my guy, that's why you're getting paid. And according to John's reporting, this wasn't supposedly a one-off incident either. These clips help explain why so many former customers eventually became unhappy with the service.
Figure it the out or get the off my program. It's not.
No. I'm not gonna leave because I'm paying.
So shut the up real quick. Shut up. Shut the I'll get you right now. Shut up. Listen, motherfucker. Hey, you're 48. You're acting like a. I don't know how to figure out macros. Go figure it out. Your ass up. Do you think this is wasting our time? I hit you so hard.
Wasting my time. I'm calling you for this reason. I'm calling you for this reason to help me out. I reached out to you to help me out.
You know I've smacked this shit out of you first. Shut up.
I am just kind of convinced this was a crazy heist. Essentially, he somehow finessed his life to where he was getting paid thousands of dollars per hour to just scream at people and ego trip on call. Again, we live in fascinating times to enable behavior like this, but hey, But I guess this is where the story starts moving away from just, you know, complaints about coaching calls into more serious stuff. Because according to Bravo, the former insiders he spoke with weren't just talking about rude phone calls. No, they were talking about how the money was actually being collected.
And he told me that the reason why his membership numbers are so high was because of the amount of people that never even noticed they're still getting charged, and they didn't even remember to cancel. Because think about it, a lot of these people signed up for that $47 a month plan, and they never even noticed it was still on their credit card statements. Think about it. How many times do you look at your credit card statement and not even look through every charge? Some people don't notice this. Now, this is the account that Wes Watson used for his company. And all the money from all these signups would come into this account. And from here, he would disperse it in crypto, BlackRock, other investments, and of course cash, because we see him how he loves to spend all this cash on his behavior.
Okay, so if that's true, massive. So obviously this is where things go from bad to very bad, because there's a massive difference between running a coaching program that charges crazy prices to running a coaching program that you can't cancel. So even after people are saying, hey, I'm canceling my membership, I don't like this program, I don't like going on to calls and being berated by you, and he's like, yeah, sorry, the person charging you or the company that's charging you, it can't cancel. So you're just going to be paying me forever. He didn't say that. He would say the company he had the app set up through was effing up. No, he did actually say that. Yeah, no, literally. So essentially it's like, well, my payment processor, they said they can't cancel you. Sorry.
Instead of him canceling their membership, he keeps on renewing it without their permission, even after they told him to stop. I realized right away I was on the 3-month program, and every time it would expire, he would keep renewing the membership, and I would reach out to him, and he would say that the company he had the app set up through was f***ing up and not canceling the membership. I got for $1,500 total by this guy.
I got effed out of $1,500 total by this guy. You know, a few thousand times 1,500 and more, because I mean, the guys who are racking up the coaching calls, that's for like over 1,000 per call, I think, if I remember correctly. What a heist. And apparently this wasn't a one-off issue either. This was happening with a whole bunch of people. And obviously a lot of people spend a bunch of money on subscriptions they don't even use. But the problem is when you notice it and you're trying to stop it and cancel it, the charges are actually supposed to stop. So I don't know what's going on here, but according to some former customers, they're saying that didn't always happen. And one former client claimed that he repeatedly tried to cancel and he kept getting renewed anyway. So now, if that was the extent of the allegations, we'd basically be talking about a messy subscription dispute. But apparently the former insiders went a whole lot further than that. And the next claim is by far the most serious one in the entire video.
They told me he started putting in charges on credit cards from clients from the past. He's got a gun in the house, and he's been banging credit cards from old clients. Then I told him, he's using their credit card numbers? No way. And then he says, he's been charging old clients' cards. How do you think he's paying for all this? How could these people not notice this shit, right? But now, finding this new piece of information out, it explains it all. When a charge is put in a payment processor, there's a field called a descriptor. And in that field, you can write whatever you want for the charge. So instead of it saying Wes Watson Fit like it should, he made it say Macy's, Costco, Walmart, whatever the hell he wanted. So these people are sitting there thinking these are real charges on their cards when it's actually Peggy on his computer changing the description so they won't ever know it's coming from him. What kind of was that?
Dude, I'm like kind of like stun locked from that information. That is crazy. I mean, I knew Wes Watson was a complete moron, but this takes the cake. I mean, if this is true, I think there's going to be a few more felonies now. Bravo to John Bravo for uncovering this. Just imagine being a life coach actively committing credit card fraud on your own customers that you're supposed to be coaching. At this point, he's just a bad decision coach. If you follow and do what Wes Watson did in his life, you'll just end up in prison. But multiple sources here said they were actually being charged after they believed their memberships had been canceled. But the bigger claim involved how many of these charges allegedly appeared on customers' statements. So certain charges were allegedly processed using descriptions that obviously didn't match Wes Watson's business. So the fact that he was masking charges as like Macy's or Walmart, that's insane. Now, obviously, you could argue, wouldn't people notice this? Well, a lot of people probably would, but I mean, if you're spending thousands of dollars to get in calls with Wes Watson, you might not be noticing a $200 charge here and there. That's kind of what's crazy. But then obviously he was flexing and presenting himself as a person that had a few thousand people paying him every single month. Now, did he have that big of a number because essentially no one could ever cancel it? Was that the case here? Kind of seems like it. I don't know though. Because I mean, honestly, after seeing the calls, after seeing all the reviews, it never really added up why those subscription numbers were so high. Because according to these allegations, a large chunk of these people could have been paying even though they stopped participating. And that changes the whole conversation around this guy, because suddenly you're not talking about someone who, you know, was making millions through motivation videos. We're talking about someone who essentially or allegedly was making millions through, what is this, credit card fraud? Seems like credit card fraud to me. Again, what do I know though? And also again, these are allegations. Now that I've covered my ass from being sued, let's continue the video. And some of the people that John was talking to believe the timing isn't a coincidence here, because their theory is once Wes actually was arrested, a lot of the people who normally would have just stayed quiet suddenly had a whole lot less of a reason to keep protecting him. Because when someone, I guess, is at their height of their success, surrounded by money, influence, and employees, people tend to not want to fight that. Maybe they don't want to lose their job, maybe they don't want to get dragged into some drama, and maybe they don't think any like legal battle is worth it. But suddenly, when that same person is sitting in jail facing multiple felony cases, the dynamic kind of changes. Suddenly it seems a little bit safer to bring forward new allegations. And that's how suddenly information that was or could have been private for many years starts finding its way into the public. And multiple of the people that John was talking to believed that actually Wes was becoming increasingly focused on money in the months leading up to his arrest. They claimed that he was pressured to maximize revenue and bring in as much cash as possible. Now, whether if that's true or not, that remains to be seen. But now there is one thing we know for a fact. Wes is in a much different position today than what he was just a few years ago. Because I mean, just over a year ago, he was posting videos from luxury homes talking about how everyone else is broke and acting how he had his whole life together. And today he's now sitting in jail awaiting trial. And that's important because even if none of these allegations ever go anywhere, they create a completely different problem for him. Reputation. Because the entire Wes Watson brand was built on the idea that I became successful, so you should listen to me because I know how to become successful too. That was essentially the pitch. Because as soon as people start asking, wait, is all this legit? You have a massive problem. And right now, that's exactly the question that people are asking. But at this point, Wes has way bigger problems than just some YouTube videos because, you know, again, he's sitting in jail facing multiple felony charges, which could lead him into decades in prison. But I mean, hey, considering how many times I've already talked about him this year, I'm sure there'll be some new updates soon. But if you want to watch John's full video, I'll link it in the description down below. And if you're new here, feel free to subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next video.